So, good afternoon and welcome to talk this afternoon. Introduction to the joys of search engine optimization. So, over the course of this session, hopefully, we'll start to give you a little taster into some of the things that go on behind the scenes with search engines and how you can start to optimize your websites for search engines. And hopefully I'll be able to explain to you a certain degree of how search engines work, so you get an understanding of what you need to do in order to improve your websites or change the way that your websites behave, and in order to try and get higher in search engine rankings. And we'll talk about two specific aspects of what you can do, and one is to do with the way in which you can promote your site locally to certain degrees, and we'll also talk, as the rest of the day is about social media, about how you can use social media and the fact that it's really getting more and more difficult these days to separate search engines, social media, content, and everything else that goes on to do with the day-to-day running of the website. If you've got any questions at any point, please just shout them out and I'll either answer them or lie to the best of my ability. So let's start with the very basics. Let's think about what a search engine actually is and what a search engine actually does. So, at its most basic form, a search engine allows us to type some information into a field at the top, and hopefully it's going to give us some relevant and useful answers. What we have to remember is that the search engine actually has a pretty difficult job to do. If we consider the fact that we have somewhere in the region of between 8 and 14 billion web pages out there, and nobody quite knows what the correct answer is. And every month, a search engine, such as Google, estimate that they accept somewhere in the region of 11.75 billion search requests. What it has to do, it has to have some form of understanding of what it is you're typing in the top of that box. It then has to go through all the web pages that it knows about. It then has to decide what pages are most relevant for you. And it has to do all that within 2 seconds. Because after 2 seconds, people get fed up. And they don't think it's working, they'll go to a different search engine or to a different page. So it has to do all these things very, very quickly. And it also has to make sure that the results that it gives back to you are relevant to the person who's looking at it. Because if the results aren't relevant, people won't come back. If people don't come back, people like Google don't make any more money. So, we need to have an understanding of what it does and how it applies certain rules that we can then attempt to use to help us. So what happens is that when a website appears that Google's never seen for the first time, it sends out what's called a spider. Obviously it's called a spider because it's the World Wide Web. So these spiders crawl along the web and it finds the first page of your website. And it goes, that's absolutely brilliant. I found new content that I've never seen before. What it then does is that it looks at what other pages it can find that are linked to your website. So all the links that are on the top of your page or at the bottom of your page, it then sends these little spiders out and it walks across them all and it then creates what it understands to be a sitemap. So it says, right, there are 30 pages of this website. Brilliant. What does it do to then work out why your content is going to be relevant to someone who does a search? So what it does is it then takes, obviously, those words that you type in, and it puts it into a giant mathematical algorithm. Now, in the algorithm, there are at least 247 different bits of information that it tries to apply in order to work out whether the thing that you're looking for is relevant based on the content of your page and all these other things. Now, that's at least 247. There are estimates that say it's closer to 400, 500 different bits of weighting that it applies to a page. Now, obviously, it would be brilliant if we actually knew what that algorithm was, because we'd all be at the top of the search engine rankings, because we'd be able to manipulate it. Obviously, search engines don't tell us what they are. So what we have to do is we have to work out is that it's looking for in order to make sure that we appear more relevant, more useful, and better to the target audience that we are aiming our content at. So I think the biggest piece of advice I can give you, and you probably heard this earlier in the other social media talks, is when it comes to the very first thing of writing your website and writing content for your website, ignore search engines. Forget about the search engine entirely. Write for your audience. Content is still king. Now, why is content king? Because obviously, content is the thing that drives your audience. It's the thing that engages your audience. It's the thing that makes them want to buy something, to use your service, to make you stand out from everybody else. More importantly, what search engines do more and more these days is they don't just look at the words. You know, in the early days it was great. I could type the word dog breeder 100 times into a web page, and obviously I'd appear at the top of any page that said dog breeders, because my words appeared there more often than everybody else's. It doesn't work like that at all these days. What they do is they use all this algorithmic data to try and work out what's going on. They also do heuristic processing, which is a very big word, or set of words. And what it basically does is it now tries to understand the context of your page. So it looks at your page itself, it looks at the words on your page, it then tries to work out what it is you're actually talking about, and whether what it is you're trying to talk about is relevant, whether it's within the context of what it is that people are trying to find out about, whether you are looking like you know what you're talking about, whether you are connected with other people who know what they're talking about. And it's this giant ecosystem that drives search engines. That's why when you originally write the stuff for your website, you've got to keep your audience in mind at all times. You've got to make sure that it's relevant, it's entertaining, that it's to the point, and it's thematically correct. The fact that search engines these days, go through and look for themes, mean that if you write about 4 or 5 different things on one page of your website, the search engine's going to throw its hands up and go, well, I don't know what it is you're trying to talk about in the first place. Keep it clear, keep it concise, and keep it on one theme. Possibly 2 at a push. I think it's one of the biggest things there that I can tell you. But always keep the target audience in mind. Think about the kind of things that they are going to search for.
So is that per page or per website?
Per page. You can when I say a thematic idea, obviously your company might do 3 different things. If it does 3 different things, don't put those 3 different things on the same web page in the same amount of detail. By obviously, there are occasions where you may have to reference it, and if you reference it, that's brilliant. Just reference it and say, for more information, click here. And then direct them to the page where you can structure that page to get across that theme or that key idea that you need to. So why are we in this situation where we have to make sure that our ideas are clear and are simple? Because, as human beings, we should be able to work out what's important and what's not. Well, let's consider how people actually use search engines. Yeah? People use search engines to do 1 of 3 things. They use it to do something. They want to go to a cinema. They want to find a plumber. So they need to do something about that. They want to go and find a specific site. So they know that there's a site out there called Facebook, but they can't remember the web address. So they will type in something like Facebook and it will come up with the address of Facebook. Or they want to know something. I want to know how to fix the radiator on my car. I want to know how to fix the screen on my iPod. And they are the 3 main ways in which people search on a search engine. What you've got to consider is when people are doing one of those kind of searches, or if they use combinations of those kind of search, where are you going to appear? What is going to make you stand out when people do that kind of thing? Now, it doesn't help that as people we become very lazy at searching. Yeah? In the early days of search engines, it was easy. What do is that we would type, for example, Cinema Carlisle or something like that, and we'd get a lovely list of cinemas in Carlisle, because it's pretty obvious that I want a cinema in Carlisle. Technology has made us very, very useless and very lazy. So what I do now is I maybe pick up my phone and I go, "Hello Siri, what's on at the cinema next week at 7:45, and I'd like to see a horror film." And I'm expecting this little search engine to be able to turn around in 2 seconds, process all that information, and tell me that next week at 7:45 on Thursday night at the Carlisle View Cinema that there is a showing of the new version of Poltergeist. And if I don't get that data back, I get angry at the search engine. You know, it's not that I've asked a really bad question, or I phrased it in such a way that it makes it really difficult to work out what's going on. It's the fact that we just expect that search engines can find out the answers to all this information. So we need to give search engines all the help we can to be able to provide the information that we're looking for. The more help that we can give a search engine, the higher we can potentially appear in the search engine rankings. And that's what we have to consider in terms of not just our content, but how we structure our content, how we structure our websites, and how we can help the search engine to give us the information that people are going to want to click on. So, for example, I need a plumber. I need a plumber very quickly, and I'm in Carlisle. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to type plumbers Carlisle. So what do I get as a result on any search engine? As I'm sure you're all aware, the first couple we get up there are the ones that are the paid ads. So they've paid money to make sure that they appear at the top of the page. Anyone can do that, but if you've got a lot of money, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, because basically what happens there is that what you're doing is that you are bidding on the fact that every time somebody clicks on your ad, it's going to cost you an amount of money depending on what your bid is. So if you bid 25p, every time somebody clicks on it, it costs you 25p. So if you have 100 people who click on it, great. You've got 100 people that have gone to your website, but on the other hand, they might go to the first page of your website, click straight off it. You've still got to pay that money. So what we need to do is we need to work out, depending on who we're aiming at, we want to sort of get into this area here, if at all possible. So this area here is what's known as the Super 7. So the Super 7 is Google's way of letting us know that a business that is relevant and related to our search is within the area that we are searching for. So what they do is they go along, they look at all the information on your site, you can give them a helping hand using a couple of pieces of information, and you can see if it considers you relevant, it doesn't matter where your website actually appears, you know, in the search engine rankings. The fact of the matter is that you appear here and you get your name, you get your website address, you get your address details, and you get your telephone number. Because they're the most important things that people want to know if they're trying to find you quickly. Why are we moving to a system like this? 2 reasons. Because search engines want to make sure that you get the information as quickly as possible. And secondly, and more importantly, as we're going on over time, is the advent of our little friend, the mobile phone. So over the last year, finally, the amount of searches that have been done on mobile phones has gone more than the amount of searches that have been done on desktop devices. As a result of which, search engines are changing the way that they do things. So on April the 21st, there was a big day this year, and for you might have heard of it, it was called Mobileageddon Day. So Mobileageddon Day was the day when Google changed one of their main searches. And what it did was that if your website was not as good on a mobile phone as it was on a desktop device, it starts to move you down the rankings. So that you go lower and lower and lower. Because they appreciate the fact, or I shouldn't say appreciate, you know, they want to make their customers happy. If more customers are using mobile phones, they need to make sure that your sites work on a mobile phone. So one of the things that the search algorithm does is that it takes a comparison of the speed of your website that it takes to download on a desktop system and the speed it takes to download your website on a mobile phone. And if there is a big difference between the two, it will weight you accordingly. And it will also weight you accordingly depending on what type of search you do. So by what type of search, Google changes the results that appear on mobile phones than it does for the results that appear on main desktop searches. So if your website is more mobile friendly, you will appear higher on mobile search results. Obviously, what it also does is that it makes sure that by the information that you're getting there on a mobile phone, you can see that all the numbers are hyperlinked, because these days you can just click on your mobile phone, click a number, and it will call it for you automatically. So we need to make sure that we can get ourselves into this zone in some way, shape or form. And that's where this idea of what local SEO is, because obviously what we can do is we can do our SEO and we can target absolutely everybody in the universe. However, do we want people from Azerbaijan ringing us at 4 o'clock in the morning? Not necessarily. You know who your target market is, you know how far they're prepared to come to use your services. Now, if you're a local service and you're dealing in that sort of area, you need to make sure that you are using terms, phrases that specifically target people within a local area. If you're a guest house or a hotel or something like that, for example, you're going to widen it slightly. You're going to be talking about the Lake District and areas like that. So what can we do to help ourselves along that way? Well, obviously we've got this bit here where we've got our content. The other thing that we can do is that if you're already on Google Plus and things like that, chances are you're already a member of something that's called Google My Business. So what Google My Business does is, if I type in the name of a company that's been registered properly and has gone through the Google My Business process, so basically what happens there is that if you're not a member of Google already, you can register for the service, and what it will do is they'll send you a code to prove who you are. And you get that code, you put it in, and you put in your details. And as a result, what will happen is, if somebody searches for your company name, you can see on the right-hand side, Google Map disappears to a certain degree. And we lose stuff that goes with the Super 7. What we get is, we get a logo of our company. We also get a little map that shows exactly where it is. We get the name of the business, the type of the business, the address, the telephone number, and the opening hours, so that people know very quickly where that you're there or not. The other thing is that obviously you get an automatic link to a set of directions, because Google obviously know that if you're on your mobile phone and that pops up, you click directions and they can find you. Because chances are they're going to be searching for you in one or two ways. Number one, they're at home and they're just trying to find out more about your business, or they want to use your business. Number two, they desperately need you, they're wandering around town and they're a bit lost and can't find your building. So that's why that information sort of appears in that area over there. You can also add, with that service, you can add photographs. So you can add static photographs that show off some of your services, or any photos that you've got. The more photos you've got, it will show 3 or 6 of them, and people can get access to that. And also, if you're one of those businesses that has used something that's called Google 360, if you've ever seen it, so Google 360 is the one way to do a panoramic view of your building or whatever, that appears automatically under there as well. Google My Business is free. Google 360 costs, and you can't do it yourself. You have to go to an approved Google 360 person. I think the normal cost for that is somewhere in the region of about £300. But then Google host it for free and put that information there. It's one of those things, you might not use it. I think the places where I've seen it used most are obviously restaurants, hotels and guest houses, because people can get a panoramic view of what it looks like. And interestingly enough, there have been a spate of hairdressers that have started showing off their salons in this way. Because obviously, because you've used a paid service from Google, if you've got things like Google 360 in that there, Google do quite like it, so they give you a little nudge at the rankings to say, well, you're trying to provide a value-added service. The other thing that allows you to do if somebody searches for your business name over time is that you get this section under here as well. So this is where you can start to specify what you think some of the key pages of your website are. So instead of them having to click on the main page of your website and then go through the website itself, what will happen is you'll get 4 or 6 or 8, like what you consider to be important pages. So you can have a products page there, like a warranty page, or depending on what it is that you think is important, you think of the things that your customers are most likely to click on. And as a result of that, they'll appear there, people go, oh, that means it's easier to use, they'll click on it and drive traffic to your site.
Can I just ask, is there a facility for using this without the map, without putting your address in? Like if you work from home, you don't want people to...
If you work from home, what you can do is, you still have to put in an address, but instead of specifying your address as the place what you work from, Google Maps and like Google My Business will allow you to specify what's called a service area. So what it will do is, it will put a pin in the general area where you are, and then instead of putting your address, it will say, it will draw a circle and say, I'll work within 50 miles, I'm prepared to work within 50 miles of this area. Now, the thing about that is that does work for things like Google, it doesn't work for them all. So people like Yelp and other directories still want some form of address, and directories are starting to come back into fashion in some way, shape or form as a way of proving who you are in terms of search engines. So there's just something to be a little bit careful about. So I've gone through that process. Brilliant. Let's think about what else I can do to help Google on my way in showing that I am a reputable quality local business or whoever my target market is. So on my website, obviously what I can do is I can specify certain pieces of information. And I can change them. And I can change them specifically for a search engine. So the 2 bits of information I'm going to talk about next are the bits that you see when you do a Google search. So what we've got here is the blue line that appears, that you click on that takes you through to the website. That's obviously what's called the meta title. And then the grey bit underneath is what's called the meta description. And what you can do with them is, depending on how your website is set up, you can write them individually for each page. And it's something that I would recommend that you do spend some time doing. Because what you might do is you might write something that's a little bit flowery or something like that. So you might give your page title something that's very long-winded. So 150 things to do when I'm grooming my dog. And the important keywords there are grooming my dog. Now this section here only will show 60 characters. So if I didn't change my page title, all they would see is 150 things to do when, and then it would stop. So obviously, the person who's looking at my website, who's looking at the search results, doesn't actually know what the page is about. As a result of which, they may not click on it. And this is what you're trying to do. You're trying to drive people to click on your site. So you can see that here for the first page of the website, we've literally got the name of the website, and we've got the tagline for it. And you can craft one of them for each page so that it's relevant, it's useful, and it gets in one of the key ideas or key phrases that your page is talking about. The meta description is the bit where you can start to sell what this page is actually about. And you have 155 to 160 characters to do that. And you do that because that is the first thing, obviously, that the person sees when they're reading through the results of the website. If you haven't grabbed them at that point, chances are they're going to scroll through and they're going to find something that's more relevant. If you do not write anything in that area, what a search engine will do is it will take the first 160 characters of the page of your website. So whatever is written at the very top of your page, that's what it takes. Or, if it's using one of those searches where somebody's typed in lots and lots of different words, will do is it will try and match up as many of those words as possible, and it will put in little snippets, which may not make much sense because they're out of context. And the best example I can give to that is, I've left this one here on purpose, so this is actually a blog post, and I haven't written an excerpt for it. So, what it says David Kinsella, my name. And then it says, by David Kinsella on November the 21st, 2013, in uncategorized ID word.